Welcome and congratulations to all of you on making a splendid and entertaining television show. No small thing in the current landscape. And thank you to Netflix for helping you do that. Congratulations. Zach and Katie, I always have to start with you, the writers. Without you, we would not be sitting here. So let's hear it for writers. Yes. So, Zach, as much as Black Rabbit is a crime thriller, it's also a study of family, loyalty, and generational trauma. In what specific ways did the backdrop of New York and its restaurant scene most lend itself to you to exploring these themes? And for Katie, who or what most inspired the two of you to create the characters of Vince and Jake and place them at the center of this world? So maybe start with Zach.
Well, thank you all for being here, first of all. I think, Kate and I lived in New York for almost 20 years, and restaurants were very central to our life there, and I think that we were always really interested in exploring sort of that dichotomy of what particularly like a restaurant that's also a night spot meant to a community, but also sort of the dichotomy of like what it appears to be when you're trying to get inside of a place like that, and then what it actually looks like when maybe you're there in the early morning hours where the trash is being taken out and
the smells from the street are wafting.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big part of New York, is this idea of like that there are like shifts in New York where there's the night shift, and then there's the people who come in and the city is theirs in the early morning. And I think we were really interested in that, both as like a setting, but then also as something that could be explored as characters. And I think that Jake and Vince were people that we looked at as like either they are presenting the face of that restaurant, of the door, or they are also like behind the scenes, the people who, there's a lot of stickiness around their actions, and that felt really fertile.
And that world serves as a great study for a facade and what's really going on. The exclusivity at the door, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think that one thing, in New York in particular, but LA obviously, like there's always another room that you feel like, oh, I just got in this restaurant, and you're like, wait, there's a secret place back there and I can't get in there. And that Jake and Vince, I think, like tried to build a place like that because maybe they didn't have access to that kind of world. And so that Jake particularly, we talked a lot about with Jude, is someone who's built this facade of who he wants the world to see him as. And then, in the daytime, it takes a lot of work to put on that face.
It's like putting on a show at night.
Putting on that show, yeah, a lot. So.
And Katie, tell me about the way you drew these characters. I love their dynamic. I love that you chose a brother duo to explore these themes. So tell me about when you sat down to actually create these people.
Well, both Zach and I have siblings, and
very relatable.
There's no real Jake and Vince situations in our lives, but we both have complicated relationships with our siblings, and we're really interested in exploring kind of family dynamics and how who you are with your sibling is kind of different than who you are in the world, and really loved this idea about two brothers who kind of revered and challenged each other and were kind of bound to each other by golden handcuffs, where I think Jason has said this before, but like no other relationship in your life, you can leave a bad friend, or you can leave someone who treats you in a bad way or continues to make bad decisions, but these two just can't leave each other. And I think, one of my favorite parts about their acting and kind of the story that we tell is they really do love each other. Like there should be so much hate and animosity, but in their performances and
it would be easier for them to say goodbye to each other if they could.
Yeah, and I think they played so well, and we were really interested in that just kind of person that you can't get away from, and you can't get away from yourself in front of that person. That I think Jake in particular has always done a good job of, like Zach was saying, putting on a face and kind of portraying who he wants to in the world. And Vince's character really wears it on his sleeve and kind of doesn't care how people interpret him, because he has such a strong sense of being wronged by the world and various other things, but really wanting to explore like that family dynamic and how having a chaotic childhood, how two different people could end end up such different places.
And it's sad too. It's hard to watch. And I think we can all relate to that. We have people in our lives who we can see in these characters.
Yeah.
And it's very touching. Jason, congratulations to you on another successful Netflix partnership. After your Emmy-winning tenure creating Ozark for Netflix. And of course, here you serve again as an EP and a director on the 2 episodes we saw today. Congratulations on that. But I have to imagine your biggest challenge in this project was preparing and transforming yourself for this character. You seem like you underwent a pretty drastic physical, not just your hair, although we see that today, you've gone slightly back to normal. But there's a real drasticness to your physicality in this role that I think I haven't seen you do before. So I want to talk about your preparation and what was most important to you in your process as an actor outside of your other jobs on this show.
I'll echo Zach. Thank you guys very much for coming out on a Sunday morning for this Sunday fair.
This is church. This is what we do in Hollywood.
Not really a breakfast two-parter. I mean, I will downplay and deflect any sort of process hard work questions.
Oh, come on.
But,
just a little bit.
The transformation, you grow you just don't go to a barber shop and you stop eating a little bit. Because, in truth, this guy Vince he's part of me. I got a lot of Vince in me. I've learned how to sort of not step on the third rail.
Which parts of Vince, I guess, spoke to you the most?
His vulnerability and his humanity. He doesn't really have a lot of either ability or patience for artifice and posture. He's just who he is, and either out of necessity or he just doesn't have any other tricks. And I like that sort of rawness about him, and it also lends itself to a good sort of story in that he doesn't have the coping skills to get himself out of bad situations. So, you want to click to the next episode. If he was smarter, this would be a short project.
This would be a 1-episode show.
Exactly. So I just love, we're all broken and flawed, and we just kind of learn how to manage that and develop skills to keep ourselves alive. He hasn't,
And that's, again, it's hard to watch because I think we are rooting for him. And we want him
Hopefully,
yes, we want him to be successful, have a relationship with his daughter, and again, it's
a challenge because you start first thing you see, he runs over a guy twice, and he's kind of
he doesn't make it easy on us to root for him.
No,
we
yeah,
still
he's
do.
kind of a dick, but you sort of hopefully you can see that he's trying and that he's well intentioned. He's a guy you kind of love to hate, maybe.
For sure. And Jude, congratulations to you. Wonderful performance as always. Yes. I'd like to know about your process working with Jason. This feels like a two-hander in that classic sense.
Yeah.
And what was it like, first of all, did you know each other before this project? What was it like to prepare? And what conversations did you have that made you feel very excited about the work you were going to do?
Well, the excitement started because obviously I'd seen the work he's done over the many years that he's been on our screens, and then the work that he obviously drew out of the team that made Ozark. That was so the excitement was there from the get-go, and then there's always a thrill when someone sees the potential in the material that you see, and so him just coming on board was a sort of a blessing and an indication that we were going in the right direction. We had something worth telling. We hadn't met, we didn't know each other. We got to know each other over a series of, a year or so where we were very generously involved in some of the writing decisions and conversations. So we'd all meet on Zoom and discuss. And with hindsight, what I realized is that an awful lot that went on then, that was being shared then, was our prep, was our sort of the details we were deciding about their pasts, their interactions, the quarrels, the heat of the quarrels, the physicality or not, the humor, the survival tactics, all of that was being discussed. By the time we got into New York and finally met, went for dinner, we're like, oh, you're a good guy. He's a nice guy,
Were you relieved?
No, I knew. I mean, I would have been horrified had it gone the other way. That would be a very different.
Hey, sometimes we're
and
different
I
over
wouldn't tell
Zoom.
you anyway. But you know, and then you just start, and then it's like you are. I've likened it to sport in the past because it's got a kind of edge to it, but you're also looking forward to having, especially tennis, like a rally. You know, you want to see how far you can push each other. And it's pretty clear when you're facing this guy that you can kind of go anywhere. You can go anywhere you want, and he may well. So you've got to be on your toes. You've got to be nimble, but it's the best kind of work.
And was there room for improv while you were shooting?
I wouldn't say. I mean, improv it's a bit like method. It's so overused as a statement, and I don't know that anyone knows what it means. You know, everyone has a method, and we had a very strong script. Once we knew we would, have to say, nail that, we were allowing ourselves to kind of have little elbow room around that and try other things out. And it does become a moment, certainly on a project like this where you have several months, as opposed to, say, a shorter, let's say, independent film situation, where you really get to know the character. You're kind of 4 or 5 months in, and you're sort of you're living them, you know, more than you are going home. And so at that point, they can at times start to kind of speak through you.
And what is Jason like as a director?
Well, I'll tell you all later.
Thank you.
These people are too
It was
humble.
seamless. It was an extraordinary thing to behold. And again, it's interesting to reflect on hindsight because I was more aware that he was right here in front of me and we were doing it. But of course, he was spinning all these other plays. But I do think it's important to say that the tone that was then set, that he had created, was one of incredible harmony and detail and passion and fun. We had a good time.
That's all that
Which
matters.
was made possible by the shared leadership
Yes.
of all of us up here.
And Zach, I know you want to say something.
I just wanted to add something about Jason as a director. That I have a video. I wish I could show it, but it's like the scene in episode 2 where Jason is in the elevator and he's gotten his finger cut off, which was a really harrowing scene to watch get shot, and like the rig on that was amazing. It was like very technical, and Jason gives this tremendously scary performance. And then I have this video of him immediately saying, like, laying on the ground with the blood coming out and saying cut, and then both laughing and sort of immediately moving camera angles and talking about blocking, and not to goose you too much, but like your ability to be present in a scene and then immediately also see what the scene needed as a director was pretty amazing to watch.
Wow, I love it. Thank you, Jude. Thank you for all your contributions. And I want to jump over to Troy. Hi, Troy. So nice to see you again. I had the pleasure of meeting you during your CODA campaign. Congratulations on winning the Oscar for CODA. So special.
Check 2.
And of course, you played Joe Mancuso, a crime boss who has, shall we say, a very complex history with Vince and Jake. This is a very different role for you, at least that we have seen. How did it feel as an artist to be given the freedom to inhabit a character like Joe, and what most excited you about the way he was written?
Well, many audience members, me, myself, growing up, I watched so many movies. I was a movie fanatic. I saw a lot of gangster films. I saw a lot of crime films, and characters who happened to play mobsters in the past came from different backgrounds. They spoke different languages. You had Italians, you had Chinese mobsters, but something was missing. Where was sign language? What happened to sign language? And my question was, are we ready to have a villain who communicates in sign language? So I'm so grateful to Zach and Kate. They asked me on awards season for CODA, what do you want to do that you haven't done yet, Troy? And I said, I want to be the bad guy. Everyone knows me for Frank Rossi. I wanted to cut Frank Rossi off, play a new character, and show that I'm an actor that has range and I can deliver a character who happens to be a villain. And give the audience a fresh perspective, and just imagine what it would be like being a villain or a mobster who happens to be deaf and running this business, and It was a challenge for me to act with less facial expressions, less body language, have everything beneath the surface, and have the directors like Jason, for example, telling me to try and keep it simple. And we had a conversation, less is more, and I really do have that philosophy. I believe in that strongly. So I was so happy to have this character like Mancuso was completely in control. And I'm sure every actor wants to play a bad guy, right? And even the audience, if you were actors, you'd want to play a bad guy. In Ozark, you kind of played a bad guy, right, Jason? And maybe you had a few others.
That is wonderful. We're so happy for you, Troy, and I cannot wait to see what you do next after this role. Hopefully you get to be on the big screen again and playing a really bad guy. But I wanted to know, and without spoiling the rest of the show, and maybe if people haven't seen all the episodes, we get to see a different side to this guy. He isn't just a one-dimensional bad guy, which is why he's such a great character. Did you have a favorite moment on set working with these artists that made you so proud, but also just so grateful to be an actor?
Well, first of all, I remember Joe Mancuso as a character. He's walking this line, right? It's not black and white, it's gray. You don't have just right and wrong. You're living within this blurry gray area. And so he struggles to navigate that area because you have to stay in the darkness, and you're in the dark taking care of business, right? And then you're in the light a little bit where he's a family man and you get to show that side of him. And I had that scene with Jude where I get to spill coffee on him. And I told myself, oh, fuck, I'm actually spilling coffee on Jude. What a great actor he is. But, but I didn't see Jude. I saw him in character, and I remained in character too. So it was a really fun to play. And as far as Jason goes, I remember another scene where we were eye to eye. And there was a moment where I was planning to kill him. But in that moment, so much happens in your eyes, right? And it doesn't happen so often. If you have a person who happens to be deaf, opposite actors who happen to be hearing, like Jason and Jude, we have these amazing moments working eye to eye with each other and really feeding off each other and each other's energy. And so I had a lot of moments like that I fondly look back on.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you so much. Yes. And Vix, hello. Very nice to see you. And you and Jason collaborated previously on Ozark, for which you edited 20 episodes across the 4 seasons. Beautiful work on Ozark. And obviously there's some connective tissue between these shows, the darker themes, etc., criminal elements. But I feel like Black Rabbit plays a lot more vigorously with tone, flashbacks, and structure that maybe Ozark did. What's most fun and challenging for you as an editor to have the flashbacks, to have the time jumps? Is it difficult to maintain the narrative thread of the linear story? And how do you make sure that we don't lose the linear story amidst these moments where we get to see the characters in their previous iterations with each other?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's difficult. I think it's, being smart about how to lay some breadcrumbs in terms of the nonlinear structure. So when we come back to that same moment, we come back to it in an iconic way, like, without giving too much away, the opening, we see Jude, we see Jake in the bathroom, and we've got the Walkman music, the needle drop playing. And later in the series, we come back there and we repurpose that moment as well with the song. So it's holding the audience's hand through those devices in many ways to help craft the story of the nonlinear structure as well.
So sort of the oral cues that come back to bring us back into the story.
Yes, and a lot of it's actually written. A lot of it was written on the page by Zach and Kate too. So yes, I think whatever tools we can have to cement the audience back, I think we would use that to our advantage basically.
And do you work together in the edit bay? Are you there with him? And then what does this partnership look like?
Yeah, Jason would come into the edit. Yeah, we during the director's cut for the first 2, it was the weekends that he would come back in, because he was shooting obviously in New York. So we got through his director's cut on the first 2 whilst he was in New York. No.
What Vix is too humble to tell you. His ability to lay a tonal cloth over the whole series is an incredible talent, and he was able to do that well, yes, we had other editors, but something that his taste and knowledge of story structure and flow is such that he just lends an incredible value to a project where, he, along with, because I had to go in and look at all the episodes and make sure there's a continuity with all of them. So once the directors came in with all their cuts, we would go in, and when we, is there something that we want to highlight in this later episode that we might want to frame up in the earlier episodes, and as you do in these types of things. But he's uniquely suited to do that in a way that he's assuming everybody's incredibly intelligent, and so those little pieces, those nonlinear pieces, that how much of them do you want? How much of them do you want to use there? How much, is it hitting it over the head? Do we get it? There's this little moment, well, without giving too much away, but, my character takes a look up through the stairwell at the family house, which doesn't really mean anything to anybody until you see later episodes. How much of that shot do you want to use? The up, the down, because it foreshadows something in later episodes. He's just a great partner to have with that type of stuff, and to be able to utilize that which they have written so well in the right way. Once you switch from a written medium to a visual medium, having somebody with his taste is invaluable.
He's a good publicist, Vic.
He is, I know. Thank you.
And I think for those of us in the room who are not editors, which I imagine is a good portion of us, what is the most difficult part of your job that you wish people understood better? Because I do feel like it's consistently an underdog position. We don't really have a sense of how much of this magic is created and overseen by you. So what do you wish people understood about what you do?
I mean, I think it's a tricky job, because you're telling story, you're crafting performances, you're helping, you're world building, you're setting the tone or cementing the tone even further from what's on the page. There's a visual aesthetic and that you're also kind of helping to shape and build. And specifically, if you're cutting the pilot, I think you're helping with the director's vision. You're kind of defining the sandbox that you get to play in. So, and I get to chip in a little bit and help make that sandbox a little bit bigger for the directors and the other editors involved and all the other filmmakers involved in the project.
And also just combing through just the tonnage of
Well,
footage.
that's really what I'm thinking. It's just the amount of footage you're combing through, and just the volume that you're dealing with is just stunning.
Thank you. But I don't really find
I'm never
as challenging.
But I'm never prescriptive with, some directors will go to a script supervisor and say, mark that take, so that the editor only assembles those chosen takes. I never do that, because with him, he always picks the best moments, and you forget what you've got there, and I don't have the time to go through and comb through all the dailies. And so and also how he works with Danny and Saunders on where music goes, and the tonal guide that he'll pick with some temp music and stuff that's usually theirs. That is invaluable, because that can be laborious to sit through and try to figure out where's the best moment for music and what should the tone be there. How much does the audience need help? How much of it should be juxtaposed to the tone? Should be supportive of it? It's tough.
Absolutely. So Danny, congratulations to you. Your contributions on the score are quite stunning as well. And obviously music figures prominently in the show, both as a theme, but also it's a touchstone for our characters. It represents happier times for these two gentlemen. And is it true that you guys actually did perform the music that we hear as the Black Rabbits? Is this true?
We didn't perform. We did that silly video where it looked like we knew what we were doing, ish.
It was convincing. It was convincing.
We had got Albert Hammond from The Strokes to write that song. He's sort of a friend of the court, and The Strokes is a big influence to
Sure. I hear a lot of Strokes in this score. Absolutely, the time and place feels very on point.
We should say Jude. That is Jude's vocals.
That's what I was trying to get to. That is Jude singing. He's trying to pretend it's not. Look at him.
It's pretty fun putting that together. That was really fun cutting just both of these two.
Yes, the video was fun.
It was hilarious.
It looked like everyone was having a lot of fun.
It was the last day.
Really?
That was our last
how
day.
Funny. Wow.
I had to wait so I could shave and cut my hair.
I was going to say the timeline of the hair was definitely a concern. So in terms of inspiration, Danny, in genre and style, Strokes, obviously, we've heard about that reference. Are there any other bands you listen to? Or is there any other kind of music that you love that you thought, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for me to explore? And you told me earlier you're a cellist, so I'd love to know how that experience and that skill set informed your approach to this score.
Well, the cello, probably not so much in this score, apart from the lowest string, which are probably detuned. So it's like...
Well, there's a lot of low bass sounds and a lot of like pulsing bass sounds.
There's quite a lot of that, I would say. Probably allowed one layer of that. We have four juxtaposed on each other. It's basically, I was thinking of the soundtrack as kind of, or the score rather, as like a triple layered cake. And at the bottom you have all the subwoofer dark crap, and on the top we have like maybe like a hi-hat or higher like things and clashes and things. In the middle, we just took it all out. Nothing in the middle, so just the bottoms and the tops. And then the rest of it is the sound of New York in the middle, taking care of its business. So that's kind of how we approached it. It's all about minimalism and what can we do with sounds that are non-traditional, clanging things together, old garbage cans, my desk, an old bottle in the corner I took out and just started whacking it with a chopstick. Why get a proper mallet? Sounds like something proper then. So it was all about getting it raw, weird samples, and then we were just talking about this, it sounds like, I wanted it to sound like, well, my partner Swanda is not here unfortunately, but like an electronic song that's about to drop its beat so big that you're like, oh, when is it going to drop? I've been waiting an hour, and we never give it to you. We just don't. That's the idea.
Like
that
we're
was
waiting
the
for
through
the
line.
success.
That was the through line since the beginning. Jason said, I want it like this, all the way to episode 8. Don't give it to us. Not in 3, not in 4, all the way, anxiety, all the way to the end. But yes, sir.
But it starts with actually what Jason and I, when we look before we started shooting the entire project, we had a lengthy conversation about score, specifically temp score, and your hopes for it, which was, you know, Jason said to me, he goes, I want the score to have like, I want it to feel internal, anxiety, objects, abstract, you know. So curating a library of that, then for Danny and Saunders to play with, and then elevate that just to feed into that anxiety and make that simmer all the way through. Was
because hopefully, what Zach and Kate have created, these two characters, again, hopefully somewhat lovable, broken folks that are trying to figure it all out and keep their head above water. And you know, what's the visual component of that? What is the musical component of that? And one needs to feel unsettled, and the edges are sort of frayed, and when are they going to come back together? And knowing that Danny and Sandra were going to provide that, it allowed us to do a little bit less sometimes with our performance, a little bit less with camera. I mean, you're always sort of balancing out these levels, and knowing that you've got them at the end of the process to really be, I mean, I would say for this and for Ozark as well, like it just, I would say the central character, the biggest influence on that which you are going through is really there through the score, through those projects. They're just
like a great moment. I was just saying before, is like when one of their characters is receiving some kind of terrible information or whatever, and they're on the phone, and we pause on the camera, we see them just staring for a minute, absorbing. Musically, or might score that with like, oh yeah, like he must be feeling a lot right now. We're like that for about a second or two, but then right on to the next, because it's not okay. It's not going to be okay in about 2 minutes. So we've got to keep it. So we always are like interrupting ourselves, which is why the beat never drops. You understand? Like, so that's how we do it. It's quite simple, really. It's not like this. We sit there for hours intellectualizing about it. It's just about how can we make this as anxious as possible. We feel it in here.
What a team you've assembled. And then to wrap it up with the writers, of course, without whom, again, we would not be here. I'd like to know, Zach and Katie, what you feel this story has to say about the limits of loyalty, and what are we to glean from loyalty, and is it good for us ultimately? Is it, how far can we push ourselves? So maybe Katie, you can start.
Thank you. I hope people are left with. I think there's a lot of hope in the story, even though it's pretty bleak and tragic. We think and talk a lot about second chances and bad decisions that we have made and people in our lives have made, and I think we always knew where we wanted the brothers to start and end up, and it was always going to be tragic, but I think and hope that people take away some. There's a lot of hope for both of these characters, and I think all of the supporting cast. There's a lot of love and support and kind of familial bond through all the relationships. Troy's relationship, Mancuso's relationship with these guys, Mancuso's relationship with his son, their relationships with their children. So even though it's dark, there's a lot of light. So I hope people will take that with them when they're doing it.
Yeah, and I think when you say hope, what I think about in that is that they continue to return to these relationships even though they've been hurt by them, because there is this sort of hope that it will. There's a chance that they could be resolved, or that they'll together. I think they have this sort of codependent relationship, obviously, but that together they could have been something great. And I don't know that we have the answer of what the where
There
the
doesn't
where,
need to be
or
one.
no, I'd say where loyalty or family bonds really should break or hold together. But I think that we were writing stuff that, frankly, we were going through quite a bit of, and just wanting to have this amazing opportunity to sort of explore what it felt like to be in those situations and in those relationships, and then have this incredible gift to have Jude and Jason and Troy and this team sort of manifest that stuff. So
I love this central notion of sacrifice that is a necessary component to loyalty, and to love and to any relationship. One has to sacrifice, and what are the sacrifices that these two go through to stay loyal to one another, even though on paper it's what are you doing with this guy? But as any family member, you don't give up on them, and it's heartbreaking and it's tragic to watch sometimes. But what you guys were able to do was show this. You have to dig for it a bit, but this incredibly uplifting sacrifice of love and patience and compromise that one has to go through when you decide to be loyal, or when you're forced to be loyal based on a family bond.
Well, thank you all for giving us so much to think about, and congratulations.